Dear students, hope you are all well. So today we will begin with a chapter in geography. The name of the chapter is winds. Now let us see the difference between air and wind. First, what is the difference between air and wind? What do you mean by air? So, air is the mixture of gases in the atmosphere. You know what do you mean by atmosphere? Atmosphere means the layer of air around the earth. So, the gaseous mixture in the atmosphere is called air. And what it includes? What does air includes? It includes all the gases. All the gases, example, oxygen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide, and in some amount of other gases also. Okay. Now, what is wind? Wind is the horizontal movement of air. So, it is a movement of air which the air moves horizontally. That means this way, sleeping. The horizontal movement of air is called wind. And this movement of air is caused by what? What is the reason of the movement of air? Why the horizontal movement of air is there? It is because the pressure difference between two places. Now, what do you mean by difference in pressure or difference in air pressure? Yes, in one place, example, the pressure is something 1020, and in the other place, the pressure is something 1040 millibars. Okay, so now what is the difference between them? The difference between them is 20 millibars. Why? Because in the first one I said it is 1020. Okay, and the next is 1040. So there is a difference between 20 millibar. So that is the difference between air pressure. Now why is this happening? Wind is the horizontal movement of air caused by the pressure difference, the difference which is there. Because of this pressure difference, the wind is created over there. And the movement is how? The movement there of air is horizontal. Okay? And because of this horizontal movement of air, winds are caused. So I hope you got the difference between air and wind. Let's move forward. Now look at this picture. In this picture, in the previous lesson also, air pressure lesson, I explained you the difference between pressure belts which are formed on the earth. And you can see here the equatorial low pressure belt. Okay. Where's the equatorial low pressure belt? In between. Okay. After that comes the mid-latitudinal high pressure belts which are in both the poles, right? North and south. And this way the pressure belts are formed, which we learned in the previous chapter. So here, near the equator, you can see the low pressure belt. Okay, can you see there? It's a low pressure belt. Then the high pressure belt. Then again low pressure belt. And again the poles in between the hemisphere, you will have the polar high pressure belt. So it is alternate. Low pressure, high, low, high. Okay, so it is alternate. So one more thing. So you know the pressure belts on the earth now, right? You know the pressure belts, which all pressure belts are there. That means what? Air pressure is not uniform. Air pressure is not equal. Somewhere it is high and somewhere it is low. And as I told you previously, that air will always move. Air will always move. The movement of air will be from high pressure area towards the low pressure area. Okay, so the movement of air will always be from high to low. And also, how is the movement of the air? The movement of the air will be horizontal movement of air. Okay, and because of this horizontal movement of air, what are caused? What are created? Winds are created. Now see this red arrows. Can you see the red arrows? This red arrows is the original direction of the winds. You can see it's written also over there. That's the original direction of the winds. Okay. But what happens to this original direction of the winds? As the earth rotates, as you know, the earth is rotating. Because of the rotation of the earth, the original direction of wind, it changes. Okay, because of the rotation it changes, and you can see here the blue arrows, yes, which is marked over here, is the change in the direction of the winds. So the red arrows is the original direction and the blue arrows is the change in the direction. Because of what? Because of the rotation of the earth. Okay, so this is the change of the direction of the winds. In this way, winds are generated to the horizontal movement of air. Okay. Now, let us see what happens because of the difference in air pressure. Okay. Now, because of the difference in air pressure, what it affects? We'll see that. The velocity is explained to you just now, right? Just now I explained to you what is velocity. It affects the speed. See, the difference which is there in the air pressure will affect the speed of the winds. That means the velocity of the winds is affected because of the difference in air pressure. How it's affecting the velocity of the winds? See here, less difference in the air, less difference in the air pressure, wind will blow with less velocity. And if there is more difference in air pressure, winds will blow with greater velocity. And velocity of the winds is measured. You should also know how the velocity of the winds is measured. As you know, in air pressure is measured in millibars. We learnt in the previous chapter, air pressure is measured in millibars. Similarly, the velocity of the winds is measured in the unit called knots. You can see in the last box, right? It's measured in knots, or it is also measured in the unit called kilometers per hour, or we can say kph. Okay, so what is the unit used to measure the velocity of the winds? It is known as knots or kilometers per hour. Now let's move forward. Now look here in this picture. This picture is in your textbook, and this picture is showing you the planetary winds and pressure belts which are created on the Earth's surface. Now pressure belt we learnt in the previous chapter, right? So you can see in this figure between, just look at that figure, okay? So you can see in this figure between 5° north to 5° south, we have the equatorial low pressure belt. Then between 25 degrees north to 35° north and even in south, we have the mid-latitudinal high pressure belt. And 55 degrees north to 65 degrees south in both the hemisphere, you can see the subpolar low pressure belt, and beyond that you can see the polar high pressure belt, which is from 80 degrees towards the poles in both the hemisphere. So this is what we learnt in the previous chapter, that were pressure belts. So you know pressure belts, okay? Now, when I explained you the lesson, air pressure, that time I told that the winds will blow from high pressure area towards the low pressure area. You can see the arrows over here in this. Here it shows that the winds are blowing from high pressure to the low pressure. You can see the arrows over there, right? So this shows that the winds are blowing from the high pressure towards the low pressure. You can see over there from high to low. Here also similarly from the high pressure to the low pressure. Okay. Now which are the winds blowing? Okay. They have a name, right? The winds near the equatorial low pressure belt, which are the winds? They are called as easterlies. Can you see the winds blowing towards the equatorial low pressure belt? They are called as easterlies. Okay? Easterlies are the winds which are formed near the equatorial low pressure belt. Okay? Then which are the winds which are blowing towards the mid-latitudinal high pressure belt? Now which are the winds blowing towards the mid-latitudinal high pressure belt? They are known as westerlies. Can you see? From the mid-latitudinal, the arrow is going upward. So that is westerlies. So winds are known by the direction from which they blow. Example, easterlies, that means what? Easterlies are the winds which blow from the east side. Similarly, westerlies are the winds which blow from the west. Okay? So you know the direction, right? North, south, west and east directions. You know, right? So remember, winds are known by the direction from which they blow. Whichever wind blows from which direction, they are known by the direction from which they blow. Let's move forward. Next is the direction of blowing. As I told you, now the direction of blowing. Just now as I told you, the direction of blowing. The condition of air. How is the air? Whether the air is moist, whether the air is dry, it depends upon the condition of the air. The duration. Then the next is the duration. What is the time taken and the regions covered? Because of this, winds, which regions are covered? The third is regions covered. So because of this, which regions are covered? Again, I will repeat the direction of blowing. I'm talking about the direction of wind. The direction of the blowing of the wind, the condition of the air, whether the air is moist or dry, the duration, the next is the duration, the time taken by the wind to blow towards the region and how much is covered, the regions covered by those winds. All these factors determine the wind type. That means which type of wind it is. All these factors which are there, these four factors determine the wind type, whether they are westerlies, easterlies or polar winds. So these four factors, okay? So let's move forward. Now this is a picture again. So there are some winds which blow regularly on the surface of the earth. Now there are some winds which blow regularly on the surface of the earth. Okay. There are some winds, they are blowing regularly. Means daily at a proper time. So some winds blow regularly on the surface of the earth from high pressure to the low pressure. Always winds blow from high to low throughout the year. And which are these winds? Just now as I told you, which are these winds? So these winds are easterlies, westerlies and polar winds. These are three types of winds. Now, planetary winds are of three types. These three are all known as planetary winds because they blow throughout the year. They are easterlies, westerlies and polar winds. Now look here, winds which blow from 25 degrees to 35 degree parallels, winds blowing from 25 degrees to 35 degrees parallel. Which are these winds? Guess it and tell me which are these winds? They are which are blowing from 25 degrees to 35 degrees parallel. That means from the mid-latitudinal high pressure belt. So these winds are called as westerlies. Always wind blows from high to low. So these are the westerlies wind. Let's move forward. Now let us study about the winds which are blowing towards the equator. That means near the equatorial low pressure belt. Okay. Which are these winds which are blowing near the equatorial low pressure belt? They are called as easterlies. So, due to the rotation, the original direction changes as I told you, right? Now see here, near the equatorial low pressure belt, the original direction of easterlies is actually the red arrow. You can see the orange arrow, the orange arrow. But because of the rotation of the earth, what has happened? The direction has changed, which is the blue arrow. The direction of the wind is changed. So that is the blue arrows you can see. The easterlies are the winds which are blowing near the equator or the equatorial low pressure belt. In the northern hemisphere, above the equator, okay? Northern hemisphere will come above the equator. So in the northern hemisphere, wind blow from northeast to southwest. Okay, northeast to southwest. How the winds are blowing? From northeast to southwest in the northern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere is above the equator. And what happens in the southern hemisphere? In the southern hemisphere, winds will blow from southeast to northwest in the southern hemisphere. From southeast to northwest. This is the direction of the winds. Which winds? They are called as easterlies. Okay. Now the next planetary wind is westerlies. As I told you, when the winds are blowing from the west, they are known as westerlies. These winds blow in both the hemispheres. Okay, these winds blow in both the hemispheres. As you can see in the picture, westerlies is written, so it blows in both the hemisphere. So here, the original direction and the change direction of wind because of the rotation of the earth. Now, where these westerlies are blowing, these winds blow in the mid-latitudinal high pressure belt. Okay, as I told you before, they blow from the mid-latitudinal high pressure belt. From mid-latitudinal to subpolar, that means upwards they blow. Okay, so where are the westerlies blowing? Mid-latitudinal high pressure belt to the subpolar low pressure belt. Winds blow from high to low. So which are these winds? These winds are westerlies. Okay, and how is the direction of these winds? In the northern hemisphere, the westerlies will blow from southwest to northeast. How they are blowing? From southwest to northeast. That is in the northern hemisphere. And in the southern hemisphere, how the winds are blowing? From northwest to southeast. Okay? From northwest to southeast. Which are these winds? Westerlies. Okay? Now, the third planetary wind is the polar winds. The polar winds. When these winds blow, where are these polar winds blowing? Can anyone tell me where are these polar winds blowing? They are blowing from the polar high pressure belt. You know, near the North Pole and the South Pole. Okay, they are located over there. High pressure belts are there. From high pressure belt towards the subpolar low pressure belt. These winds blow from the poles to the subpolar low pressure belt. Okay, these winds are called as polar winds. So which are the three planetary winds we learned? Easterlies, westerlies and polar winds. So always remember the winds blow from high pressure towards the low pressure. Now let us study about the local winds. Now what are local winds? The winds that blow for a short period of time. That means they will not blow throughout the year. Okay, they won't blow throughout the year continuously. They will not blow like the planetary winds. Okay, these three types of wind. They won't blow like them. Local winds only blow for a short period of time. And one more thing, they will not blow everywhere. Okay? They will originate in specific regions and blow over a limited area. That's why they are known as local winds. They only blow in a particular area or a particular region. That's why they are called as local winds. So what are the specialities or characteristics of the local winds? These winds, they blow for a short period of time in a specific region for a limited area. They will only cover limited area and that's why they are known as local winds. What happens because of these winds? They will affect, these local winds will affect the climate of the region. Will it affect the climate of the region? The climate will be affected of that region. So, whenever the winds are blowing, suppose for example, hot winds are blowing, then the climate will be what? It will be hot. Okay, and the temperature will rise automatically. So whenever the climate is hot, the temperature rises. If these local winds are cooler, what will happen? If they are hot, the climate will be hot. Okay, if these local winds will be cooler, what will happen to the climate? There, the climate will low down. Okay, this is how the local winds, they affect the climate of the region. Now these winds are known by different local names in different regions. Okay, and that's why they are known as local winds. So always remember about local winds. They are not like the planetary winds. Okay, they are not like the easterlies, westerlies and polar winds. They blow for a short period of time in a particular region for a limited period. Okay, let's move forward. That's your homework. The first question is, in the northern hemisphere, winds blowing towards the equator dash due to the rotation of the earth. Next, wind velocity is measured in the units of dash or kilometers per hour. Next, what are planetary winds? And the last one is, what causes the change in the original direction of the winds? That's all for now. We will learn the other part of the lesson in the next video. Thank you for listening, children. Goodbye. Take care.